So, welcome all to this webinar on Ecovillage Design and Community Living. I'm glad to be here at Findhorn Ecovillage and here with all of you from all over. So maybe before we start, you are all invited to write on the chat your name and where are you calling from. It would be very good to know who are here with us. And in the meantime, I can introduce our guests, very special guests for this session today. I'm here with Maria Cooper and with Jonathan Dawson. And I will introduce you both of you in a very informal way. I can say that I met Jonathan many years ago in 2008 in Brazil when I was doing my first Ecovillage Design Education program. He was part of the faculty teaching economy at the time at Parque do Ibirapuera in São Paulo. There was a huge group, over 100 people. And we will share more about the Ecovillage education and Ecovillage design. But that really touched me. And from there, I met Jonathan several times in programs, in Rio, and in conferences, the GEN, Global Ecovillage Network conferences all over. He works with economy and education. He was part of the team at Schumacher College. He was the chair of the Global Ecovillage Network. He is part of the Advisory Council for Gaia Education. Is that right, Jonathan? You can continue. Over to you. Very welcome to join us.
Thank you, TAISA. Yes, I was one of the founding group that created Gaia Education. We really felt there was a need to, there's a growing interest of people who were interested not just in creating new eco-villages and intentional communities, but even more so people who wanted not necessarily to create new settlements, but people who wanted to learn from the experience of the eco-village movement to identify lessons and ways of working from the eco-village experience that could be transferred into their own home places. So in a sense, it felt to me like we were serving an important function on behalf of the transition movement. People who were more interested in building resilience and solidarity into their own communities rather than necessarily new building. So the Gaia Education emerged out of a desire to create a platform through which eco-villages could share their experience more widely. And at the beginning, I've just recently joined the Advisory Council of Gaia Education. When I was involved in the early years, it was just a vehicle for EDE, Ecovillage Design Education. Today, it's this phenomenal. I sometimes open their website and think, is this a United Nations agency? Just an enormous range of educational products. Maybe the one thing I'd like to say by way of introduction is that what is distinctive about the eco-village approach generally, and certainly within the curricula that have been developed by Gaia Education, is by contrast with more conventional UN settings, for example, where the approach is much more what I'd call techno-managerial. The assumption is that we can stay fundamentally within our current way of living and working at the moment, but finding tweaks in how the economy works, maybe in our building codes, in a variety of systems within the dominant structures of society. So there's a strong emphasis on the ecological dimension, on sometimes the social dimension, on the economic dimension, but very little, if anything, to do with worldviews and consciousness, which is the fourth pillar of the Gaia education offering. And I think this is what critically sets us apart, is a recognition that, if I can just say a little bit about education, that looking at student organizations, for example, Rethinking Economics, that are campaigning for a much more intelligent and diverse way of looking at economics, is that their demands tend to be limited to the curriculum. So in other words, the assumption tends to be if we change one set of textbooks for another set of textbooks to do with economics, it's all going to be okay. And I think that I would say that it's not going to be okay, that actually what we need to do is we need to find ways of reweaving humans back into the weave of life. And that without that, we're going to be clever monkeys again, rather than sorry, this is giving monkeys a bad name, but that rather than being intelligent vandals, we're going to be, our relationship to the rest of creation becomes transformed, so that our relationship becomes much less extractive as it is at the moment, and much more generative, that we're actually seeking to put back more than, so that our systems we're enhancing our systems rather than simply tweaking at the margins. I'm going to leave it there for the moment, Taisa.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's very inspiring. We will continue very soon. But before moving on, I'm also very happy to be here with Maria Cooper. I met Maria years ago. I don't remember the exact year, when Maria joined the Gen team. She came to serve for, I don't remember, 6 months or a year as part of a voluntary work. Maybe you can share more. And at the time, I was also working for the Global Ecovillage Network. So we had the opportunity to work together in Gen. And she came to do her service in Findhorn. And here she is, because she could never leave and has been a key player in bringing Ecovillage design programs and permaculture design programs, and more than that, practicing it in a daily life. So I'm very grateful to have you on board, Maria, and I open the floor so you can further introduce yourself and share a little bit more. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Taisa. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and with Jonathan. And yes, it's true, I came to Findhorn and I never managed to leave, as happens to many of us. But yeah, my background is actually in political science. So, and I specialized in environmental social movements, and I was very interested in how we create change in our human systems. And that led me on to permaculture, to the transition town movement. And I've been working very much with the idea that any permanent change needs to be internalized in our beings, in our everyday lives. And that's why Ecovillage life has made so much sense to me. And when I came to Findhorn, I felt like this is home. And this is where I want to be and where I want to serve. And I've been very happy and privileged to be able to experiment with all sorts of things here. And yeah, so now I teach on the permaculture courses and the Ecovillage Design Education, the mini course we will hold next month. And if any of you are coming to that, you will be able to see my slightly crazy house and garden where, yeah, these sorts of practices and principles are, part of my expression of who I am and how I think I can live as a human in this world today. Yeah, so looking forward to welcoming those of you who can make it here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maria. And before we move on, it's important to let you know that this will be a roundtable conversation. So you are all welcome to share your questions. And very soon we can open the space to also try to address as much as we can. And it will be a 1-hour session. And yeah, maybe that's enough for now. Now we will ask Rafael, who is assisting us here. I think to start, the three of us mentioned the Gaia Education curriculum or the Ecovillage Design curriculum. And I would like to briefly present it for the ones who are not familiar. But this is, I think, one of the most inspiring curriculums that I've ever worked with. As I mentioned, I did my EDE in 2008, and since 2009, so for 15 years now, I've been organizing Ecovillage design programs and teaching all over in Brazil, as I'm Brazilian, but also in other countries. I had the pleasure to support teams teaching in Mozambique, Argentina, Portugal, Mexico, and also online during the pandemic. But, and as Maria mentioned, the three of us will be together very soon here in Findhorn to co-create the Ecovillage Introduction Week. 1 week including the 4 dimensions and a little bit of the experience of the community life in Findhorn. Maria will be able to share a bit more about Findhorn with us, and also Jonathan, who has lived there for a while here. And but yeah, just to show, this curriculum was created, as Jonathan also mentioned, by a group coming from the Ecovillage network, and also some educators from all over. And despite being old, we will celebrate 20 years of the curriculum next year. It is important to say that it's still transforming lives. And here we dive into the 4 dimensions of sustainability and regeneration. So social, economic, ecological, and worldview. And we also include design as a tool to practice, to transform, to see how we can use all this knowledge, combine it in a systemic way to change realities. Some people use it to make their business more sustainable. Some others to redesign their lives or to create communities and organizations all over. And yeah, I feel that's the basis to start our conversation. Thank you, Rafa. We can pause now. Wonderful. And I can open the floor. We already started a very interesting discussion in terms of the education aspects, the importance of education, and the potential of change in this curriculum in Ecovillage Design. So I invite any of you, I don't know who would like to start, maybe Jonathan, to share a little bit more about your perspective on education or the economical aspects of the curriculum. And then Maria can share a bit about the ecological aspects and worldview, and I will complement.
Thanks, Taisa. Just a couple of things. Maybe before speaking, it may be visible that I'm sitting in a car, which is an unusual place to be speaking about ecovillages from. I'm actually at a festival, a choral singing festival. I love singing. and so this is the only place in the whole site that actually has a connection. Anyway, so two things about education. One is that one of the first things that your previous president in Brazil did as soon as he assumed power. This is
Bolsonaro.
One of the first things he did when he came to power was he abolished the teaching of Paulo Freire, who is the great Brazilian pedagogue, the great Brazilian educator, which already speaks to the revolutionary potential of a transformation of our educational systems. The second thing I'd say is that in periods of relative calm and stability, within our societies, it's appropriate for education to be primarily about transmitting the wisdom from one generation to the next. But in periods of crisis, where the systems are not working, that becomes a dead end. And we need to be seriously thinking about how do we transform our education systems to make it relevant to the needs of the 21st century. And at the minute, we're in the middle of a profound revolution in terms of our thinking, and many pioneers working hard in identifying tipping points in educational systems that enable systems that are rooted in place, that are encouraging the students to take control. There's a wonderful quote from the Irish poet W.B. Yeats: "Education is not the filling of a pail. A pail is an old word for a bucket. Education is not the filling of a pail, it is the lighting of a fire." So increasingly teacher training in these more radical, innovative centres being about, rather than controlling the classroom, enabling the classroom to take fire, learning to accept that actually the intellect is not the only vehicle for learning, that actually our bodies and emotions must be involved in the process of education. So in brief, we're at a really exciting moment where education is moving from being the factory model where it's been for the last really couple of 100 years, about producing order, regimentation, workers and consumers, into a vehicle for place-based, liberatory, like an education that is questioning all the core assumptions that have held the current system in a place that really most students find deeply alienating. So it's an exciting moment.
Thank you. It is. And it's always inspiring to learn together with the ones who are trying to co-create different ways of living. And I feel this is the potential of eco-villages as living laboratories of a more resilient life. And maybe that's the moment where I can pass over to you, Maria. Maybe you can share a bit about your experience in Findhorn and the community.
Yeah, and I think just picking up on Jonathan's point there about how do we redefine the education, and myself personally, I do a lot of permaculture. I teach a lot of permaculture, and for those of you who don't know, it's looking at how nature works basically, and drawing out some key principles and practices mimicking nature, and realizing that we are part of nature, and how do we learn or relearn to understand what nature does anyway, and can we work with that and be a part of that system. And the key in it, as far as I felt, is observation. How can I observe? How can I understand what's happening around me, and work with that system so that I can grow my food, I can build my house, I can even be happy in myself, right? Because we are also nature. And so the observation is external, but also internal. What are the practices I have to observe myself? And that is permaculture, that is spiritual practice. It doesn't matter so much which name you give it, but it's the everyday practice of these things that I think makes the difference. And yeah, so being in a setting such as an eco-village like Findhorn is hugely supportive in that. There's an invitation to engage both in, oh, let's garden, let's grow our food, but also let's meditate, let's reflect, let's do that inner observation. And so coming back to the Gaia Education's curriculum, the worldview dimension and the ecological dimension, they kind of go together very nicely, as in my own observation of myself and how I interact with my garden and how my garden is growing. It all becomes a very similar practice, and it's enormously rich, obviously. So that's, and for me personally, I feel like that's relearning. That wasn't something I was taught at school, how to see what's happening in my, why is it dry here in my garden or wet there, or why does the soil disappear now? What's going up there? There was no kind of that observation. And also, why am I so emotional all of a sudden? Why do I feel overwhelmed now? Why am I angry? You know, these questions are something that we are learning constantly to deal with, and probably that is what, as humanity, what we need to do at the moment. And yeah, these are courses that are a great sort of springboard into developing what works for yourself, or that kind of thing.
Taisa, could I have another bite of the cherry?
Of course, please.
It's around the subject of systems thinking that increasingly we're finding that educators, universities are beginning to accept interdependence and what they often call systems thinking. But the conventional academic approach to it is to think about systems. So the systems are out there, and we retain this illusion of being separate from them and studying them from a cool, rational distance. Whereas the trick, I think, is to move beyond thinking about systems to thinking from within systems, or even, I'm suspicious of the word thinking. In Latin America, there's this wonderful term, sentipensar, which is feeling thinking. And so the idea of bringing the body and the emotions into the learning process, so that one moves beyond merely abstractly thinking about to getting a deep embodied experience of interconnection. And this is some of the most enjoyable and innovative parts of the education paradigm that we're within, is seeking ways of embodying the dynamics and the patterns that we're trying to change in the world. So moving beyond abstract thinking into locating ourselves within the systems and really experiencing from there.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to change the education system, because for sure the mainstream version doesn't serve. Like we don't learn at school the skills that we need to deal with such polycrisis that we are currently living. And I'm always glad to hear about schools and alternative schools, groups of people. They are doing it in a different way. And it's also important to hear about what kind of curriculum and how to redesign education. And I feel like, at least myself, I learn a lot by doing. I love like reading and studying and thinking about it, but when you experiment, you really feel the difference. And this is another element of our Ecovillage Design education. It is an experiential learning. It's a very participatory methodology where we will learn by doing, and we will also be able to connect with real examples and hear very good stories about how other people have been doing to to co-create a different reality. And maybe Maria could share a little bit some pictures of Findhorn. I can connect here that Gaia Education was funded in Findhorn almost 20 years ago. And also the Global Ecovillage Network. That's why the Findhorn Ecovillage has this special place, let's say, in the Ecovillage movement. And we are very glad to now be able to offer some face-to-face programs here. And Maria lives here. Jonathan had a many years experience. So yeah, let's have a look at this wonderful place.
Lovely. Yeah, and feel free to chip in as well, Jonathan, because you know it as well as I do. So we thought some of you might be interested to hear a bit about Findhorn as an example of an eco-village that is quite old. It was founded in 1962, if you can say founded. So it's been around for a while, and in terms of eco-village education, it's seen quite a few changes, and it's an interesting place to come to study what works well, what doesn't work well. We have many examples of that also, but also how to flow with changes. And at the moment, we are in such a big change in the eco-village movement, obviously, but in the world in general, in the economy. And we see that many of the sort of alternative grassroots environmental social movements can struggle a bit at the moment, or if you're based on volunteering, or not having the engagement maybe. And Findhorn is going through all of that as well, and there seems to be resilience in our system. So it's an interesting place to come to in that sense. So yeah, this is just a photo of what it looked like back in the day when it started. It was on an old caravan site, and this caravan sites are these sort of strange British things where people turn up in caravans and holiday a meter away from the next caravan, and it's basically just on sandy pebbles. There was nothing growing there. There we go. Those are the caravans. So this is where the community started. The founders actually came in one of these caravans and were just going to stay for a few months. And untypically for Ecovillage Start, they didn't have the intention to start a community. It just so happened there they are in their caravan. They didn't have a lot of money necessarily, so they were growing food, but what they did have was very strong spiritual practices, and in their own sort of inner listening, in meditation, listening to what guidance can I get, how should I live my life, and this was something that attracted people, and especially Dorothy, one of the founders, would get messages about the plants and how to grow food. So they attracted people, and it grew very organically. And this is a picture of maybe about 15 years ago or so. So we're actually expanded even more now. But from those humble beginnings of a caravan park, it's now looking like quite a residential area. And I think we have about 350 people living here permanently, and many more coming and going or renting, or here we go, it's an even bigger one. But you can see we're very close to the sea on this sandy soil still. And I don't know if you noticed, but at the very start there were no trees, no nature, it was just sand. And now we are in a very forested area, and all of that is planted by the community. And so coming here is also a very lovely reminder of how we as humans actually interact with nature all the time, and we can co-create with nature. And yeah, all the birds, all the plants, all the food that's growing here now is just an example of that co-creation. This is from Killarn Gardens, our biggest main food growing area. And so today the community is very diverse in terms of different practical examples. So this is an example of the living machine, is that where we treat our wastewater from the toilets and the sinks, and it's a biological system. Plants basically clean our water, and then we can use it to water the plants. What a lovely system of a loop. Anyway, so there are lots of examples of these ecological building examples, and we also have very many different organizations. But so one of them is the Universal Hall. This is a big concert hall where we also have our conferences and community meetings, but big events take place here as well. Oh yes, and here is just an example of the organizational map of the community. This is from a few years ago now, but you can see the incredible complexity in just the one eco-village, you could say. But this, like a natural system, there is a complexity which also yields resilience. So at the moment, we're in a place where that big orange dot, the Findhorn Foundation, is declining, is closing down many of its programs, etc. And as a community, we are still okay. We are thriving. There are still a lot of people living here, earning their livelihood here, because we have such a complexity in our system that we can be all right. And that, it makes it an interesting eco-village to live in. There's definitely a lot of process, and we all learn to communicate, hopefully. And but it's also, a place where we can experiment. I guess there are many edges in this system where there is learning opportunities, and we have the opportunities to try things. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, we'll try something else. That's a very, very quick introduction to us as a community. But the lovely thing is, if you do come here on one of our programs, you get to be part of it all and see how it is, and get to talk to people and go to a morning meditation or a morning singing, and hear what kind of spiritual practice or worldview people have, and how do they grow their food, or whatever it might be. And that makes it very rich. That's why I stayed for so long, I think.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for sharing a bit about the community living and your experience in Findhorn. Maybe Jonathan can add to the time some reflections on the economic systems in the community. I know you were very much part of it for a while, and we can welcome questions from participants.
Yeah, in terms of the economy, the a model that was created by an organization in London called the New Economics Foundation, and they talked about a leaky bucket. It's just as a really useful metaphor, where they're saying that really the problem in most economies, certainly in the industrialized world, is that lots of money comes in the form of salaries or remittances or welfare payments. But because communities tend to meet very few of their own needs, most of that money just immediately leaves the system. Something like over 90% of all grocery retail in Britain is controlled by the big four supermarket chains. And so I think what has happened at Findhorn and many other eco-villages is experimenting with how can we plug some of these leaks. And so there's an organization at the heart of Findhorn called Ecopia that's been a vehicle that over £1 million has been raised in community share offers, so that people living here investing in enterprises that are here, including a wind park, including the shop, including the cafe, the printing press, there's the Trees for Life tree planting charity, a wide range of a much more diverse and rich ecosystem of small enterprises owned locally, enabled in part by the generation of funding of the savings of the members through these community share offers. And certainly on the EDE, this is something we look at in depth, is just how has Findhorn and other eco-villages managed to plug the leaks in the bucket to keep money circulating locally, including the complementary currency, of course. Yes, so a very rich part of the curriculum.
Thank you, Jonathan. Let's see if there is any question from the participants. If you want to know more about Ecovillage Design, yeah, here. There's one from Gustavo. How do you see the difference between the two programs, the 4 dimensions framework, regenerative design, and Ecovillage Design? The 4D is included. The Ecovillage Design program that we usually call ED uses the 4D framework. It is the same curriculum. So I guess that's it. The 4D is included, is totally, is the curriculum that informs the Ecovillage Design Education.
Can I add, Taisa, that there's actually there's another upcoming course on transformative education that is looking specifically at education, not just as a vehicle for training people, but for deeply challenging many of the core assumptions that I was talking about before. I mean, really spending time with the pioneers in the field of radical transformative education. That's upcoming. A non-residential program beginning in mid-October.
Yes, and I will ask our team to soon share the links to these programs that we are referring to. Wonderful. Any other questions? As an Ecovillage researcher during PhD and member of GEN, I often see communities challenged with economic aspect. Do you see opportunities to regenerate that in balance with others? Maybe Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. I think there's the reality is that of the 4 different dimensions, the economic dimension is probably the one in which we draw least on direct eco-village experience. So there are eco-villages that are substantial, that Findhorn definitely being one, that has a lot to teach. The problem is that most eco-villages are too small, that actually they don't really have much of an internal economy. I live in an eco-village in the south of England, 50 people, and really the car park's empty at 8 o'clock in the morning and they fill up again at 5 o'clock in the evening. Because even at 50, 55, we're just not big enough. So it's the larger eco-villages, places like Oroville and Damanhur and Findhorn and Sieben Linden, which have enough people that they're actually able to mobilize their finances to build local resilience. So there will be a lot of material from these larger eco-villages in the EDE. But the reason why the economics dimension is the weakest, there's the one that draws least from direct eco-village experience, is one of scale.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other questions from participants? What's the difference between the course in Findhorn and the one in Damanhur? I can share. In Damanhur, it will be the full ED, and here in Findhorn for now, it will be what we call the mini ED. The full ED can be run in different ways, but usually it is a month-long program. And the one in Findhorn, the short version, will be a week-long program. Same principles, but of course, in Damanhur, it will be the complete curriculum. And we are planning to run a complete one in Findhorn next year. I can say I've done over 30 EDEs, and no one is the same. They are all unique programs, same curriculum, same structure, same methodology, but different teams. And the one thing that I love about it is that it is adapted to the context. So if you do an EDE in a big city in Brazil, it will be different than doing it immersive in an eco-village. In the immersive programs, especially if you are in communities, you will learn a lot about the community life, and you will see the examples. When you do it in big cities, it's good because the examples are more easily applicable to apply it to most of people's life that are living in big cities, and they need to adapt. It's good for networking, for creating like working groups to co-create projects together. So yeah, they are all amazing and somehow different. I would like to know more about how design thinking is brought into the curriculum. Who would like to answer this one? Oh, it seems that we lost Jonathan.
Gosh, you may come back in. I can share a little bit about the permaculture design courses that we offer, which is also a big part of the ecological dimension of the 4D framework, and so and that is all around design. So a permaculture approach is, yes, there are some principles, there are some ethics in permaculture, but the design element is the most important, and there are many different practices. People find what works for them in their context. And what we tend to teach is some core skills. For instance, how do you make a map? How do you see what's happening in a landscape or in an organization? How can you systematize that organization? How can you find the right questions to ask to then come up with a design guided by these principles, so you know it will be a resilient system? And the best way I found in terms of design thinking, to learn it, you have to practice it. So throughout the courses, we give several opportunities, small exercises around what is design, how do I do it, to bigger 1 or 2 day projects of having a practice design. And what we see participants do is actually, we're designing all the time in our lives, just, getting up in the morning and figuring out how the day is going to flow. That's a type of design that we're making. So as humans, we are naturally designers, but can we do it intentionally so that we make the designs work for us really well? And then we can take those designs into whichever context that you're in. But the design element is the core of a permaculture course, and so of the ecological dimension as well, for sure. And also it depends on the group that you're with, obviously. So it may be group design projects, and you can pick up certain skills from each other. But yeah, plenty of opportunity to learn by doing, I would say. Part of the design.
Thank you, Medea. Yeah, I can add that in each program, there is a strong design element where the group is invited to get into small groups and subgroups, and during the course, they will co-create a project together. So as we navigate through the dimensions and we learn very different contents, you have the opportunity to experiment, to adapt to your context, scale, and so on. So this is also an important element, because at the end, you have done something, and some of these projects became real projects and are implemented, and people are working on it until now. So it's part of the learning by doing, and also we learn a lot while reviewing and also implementing. Good to have you back, Jonathan.
It's a rare event in England. My phone was too hot because it was too hot.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm happy you are here. We have another 10 minutes, so maybe we have time for one more question, and then we move to the final thoughts. Okay. So maybe we can jump straight to one more question. I see a large potential for this education in Australia, and often courses based in Europe, North America, which means 2 a.m. meetings. I hear you, Jason. Are you interested to partner for delivery in Australia and New Zealand? Yes. I totally hear you. I can say that during the pandemic, I ran through 3Ds, and we had people attending, like from 5 a.m. in Hawaii and California to like midnight, 2 p.m. in Australia. And I was always very proud of these participants who can commit to be there in the middle of the night. And I think it's hard work. And recently I shared with the Gaia Education team, and we do have a strong network in Australia. So it will be good if you can share. Let's just continue this conversation. But for sure, we can prepare to offer programs in Australia and New Zealand, or at least in a time frame that is doable and comfortable for you guys to attend.
Can I come in, TAISA?
Yes, please.
So something that Gaia Education increasingly is doing is identifying really internationally recognized thought leaders and inviting them to host programs. So at the moment, both Daniel Val and Jeremy Lent are both, we've invited them under the banner of Gaia Education to run programs. I've got a good friend who I was with last week, actually, Morag Gamble, who lives up in Crystal Waters,
Australia.
In I think it's in Queensland. And I don't know why we haven't done this. We should invite Morag to deliver a program under the banner of Gaia Education. So definitely, and maybe that goes to all other listeners, is that Gaia Education is just a great platform onto which we can invite thought leaders from around the world who we really want to give a platform to.
Yeah, and there are certified trainers for sure in the area. So it's not difficult, but it will be good if you are there and motivated. Please reach out to us. I can ask Rafael to put our contact in the chat so we can continue this conversation. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. And as we are moving on towards the end of our session, I want first to let you know that I made an agreement with the Gaia Education team, and we will offer a very special deal for the ones who want to join us in the Ecovillage Introduction Week in Findhorn. This course will take place from September 9 to 15th. I will ask the team to put the link on the chat. And if you register in the next 24 hours, you will have a very special discount. You can use the Global South discount. So you'll be able to make the course in the most special price. And I will just open the mic now to Jonathan and Maria for your final thoughts. And I also want to invite all of you who are here with us to please share how are you feeling at the end of this session. Who would like to start next final round?
I can go.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at a real crunch period, and a lot of the challenge is that to persuade people that there is a problem when the supermarket shelves are heaving with under a great weight of products is difficult, and yet our systems are desperately fragile. There are so many scenarios that one can envisage within which the container ships stop supplying the supermarkets. And in this context, we simply need to instill ourselves to be able to build resilience back into our systems. And what we're doing in Gaia Education, I think, is primarily motivated by the recognition that we will need skills. We will need to be able to upskill ourselves rapidly to turn our systems around without too much warning. So what we're doing is really providing those skills, not just the material skills. Having seen many intentional communities fail, it's very often because of governance and social dimension issues. So it's really important that we provide the skills, that we provide a platform where people can instill themselves to respond to short-term crumbling of systems. So I really just want to inject an element of urgency into the conversation.
That's really important. Thank you, Jonathan. Maria.
Thanks. Yes, I think I would like to end on a note of what I appreciate the most about this curriculum and of doing this work is the space there is also for myself, for the personal experience that I have, and the importance of building my own capacity and my own resilience. And having been involved in social movements for, 20 years now, it can be very draining, and there's a lot of burnout in activists and in volunteers, and we are sort of seeing the end of that cycle, and now we're facing even bigger challenges. And the importance of taking care of ourselves, and in permaculture we talk about include yourself as the designer in the design, make the design work for you. And that is so important, that my needs, my abilities, my rhythms, my moods are part of my learning and are part of how I can live a sustainable life. We have a lovely, I would call it one of our core principles in Findhorn, which is, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable. And it's essential, actually, that we do take care of ourselves, that we have a good time, that we can feel joy even in the most challenging moments, and that and this type of holistic curriculum can include that inner realm as well.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. While I was hearing from the two of you, what came to me was that I'm so grateful for this program. Like, when I did my first Ecovillage training, that was the seed of the EDE. Years before the curriculum was launched, it really changed my life, and it is so wonderful that we have been here for not even an hour, yet. And we could talk about so many topics: education, permaculture, economic systems, and the challenges we are currently living, ecovillage design, the importance of design. And what I love in this curriculum is exactly this. Like when we talk about ecovillage design, it brings together all the elements of life: inner development, outer development, housing, social skills, economy, partnership, projects. And I feel that it creates this small pilot that where we can learn together with others to redesign our presence on Earth. That's why I keep working on it, and I really love learning. And yeah, it's really fantastic. Yes, please. We can ask Rafael to also include the banner of our permaculture design course, where Maria and others from the Findhorn Ecovillage will be teaching with us. He will share the link very soon. And wonderful. Maybe you could also write on the chat so we can hear from you. How was that to attend the session? How are you living, in one word, if possible? Whoever is still with us. Here's the link to the PDC. All welcome to join us. Good to see you around, Jan. Inspired. Grateful. Inspired. Beautiful. Thank you all. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to the Gaia Education team behind the scenes, supporting us. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Jonathan, for taking the time to be with us. And people are still sharing, optimistic. And yeah, I really hope to be together with the two of you very soon here in Findhorn, and to co-create other programs all over. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us on the other side of the screen.
Thank you very much, TAISA, for holding as well.